So I want to say sometime about last year, like 2023, late in the year, the Supreme Court made a ruling that ended race-based affirmative action in the admissions process for colleges and universities. And then as soon as that happened, obviously I saw a billion people who were pissed off about it for a number of reasons. And I've talked about it before, but somebody sent me this video, and I think people do it now on purpose because they know my general point of view on certain things, such as this. But I saw this video from Emmanuel Acho. He's a sports commentator, but he talks about all of this different kind of stuff when it comes to racial issues and social issues and things like that on the side. He made a video describing the situation, just a general overview of it, and I'm going to play it before I talk about it because I kind of, at least when I was thinking about it, I went about 1,000 times deeper than he did. And before I say anything about it, because I have a lot to say about it, listen to him kind of describe how he feels about something that Duke University did in response to all of this stuff happening.
I got devastating news. If you are a fan of educational equity, listen up, this one hurts. Duke University, it is ending a full scholarship program for Black students, the Reggie Howard Memorial Scholarship. It rewarded top applicants of African descent. It would reward them the cost of tuition. It would cover room and board, and it is coming to an end. I guess we are suggesting that all things are equal. Well, must I remind you that Duke did not admit its first Black undergrads until 1963. So if you were watching this video, then your parents probably were alive in a day and age where Black students could not attend Duke University. Now, for context of how big a deal this is, $330,000. That is roughly the cost of attending Duke University for 4 years. This Reggie Howard Memorial Scholarship, which honored Reggie Howard, the first Black student government president, in 1976. He tragically passed away. This program, it gave roughly 15 to 20 recipients annually the scholarship. That's, do the math, 900 recipients since 1979 when this memorial scholarship was founded. Absolutely devastating. I'll leave you with this. Remember, property and education in this country are the primary ways to attain wealth. And historically speaking, Black individuals have been disadvantaged from a property perspective and educational perspective. And now this is happening.
Okay, so he kind of briefly described what it was, but here's more of like a specific breakdown of what it is that he's talking about. It says Duke is discontinuing its Reggie Howard Memorial Scholarship Program, a program for top applicants of African descent in the wake of last year's Supreme Court decision that ended race-based affirmative action in college admissions. The announcement comes amidst a national trend with a number of public universities ending their own race-based scholarship programs in response to the Supreme Court ruling. Established in 1979, the Merit Scholarship, which also required some recipients to demonstrate financial need, covered full tuition, room and board for a select group of Black undergraduates. The scholarship is named in honor of Reggie Howard, Duke's first Black student government president who died in an automobile accident during his sophomore year in 1976. Now, like I said, people send me stuff like this all the time, and I know why, but I decided to pull the trigger on this one in terms of saying what it is that I wanted to say about it, because I'm noticing a real big problem that, I mean, it already has some issues now, but I can see it down the line, far down the line, being very, very problematic if it's not analyzed in a very specific way. Now, let me start by saying this. I understand the purpose of something like affirmative action and why it was implemented in the first place. I understand that, and I'm not denying its merit in certain regards. I don't think it's a secret that America has not been nice to Black people in the past. I mean, just a couple of things off the dome: slavery, Jim Crow, segregation, probably a few other things that are thrown in there that were pretty messed up. And as a result, it set the community back, which would then require programs to be implemented that would help to get Black people back up to par, so to speak. And yeah, that makes sense. On paper, it makes complete sense. But there's something he said in there that I feel as though will be very, very problematic down the line. Like I said, I already think it's a problem now, but let some years pass, some decades pass, and it'll become a very big problem. He said that, okay, they're ending the scholarship, so things must be equal now. And what I've noticed is that that's how a lot of black people, especially black people in media, that's how they think, is that we need these programs so that things can then become equal. Which, point number one, that's impossible. Things will never be equal. There will always be someone or some group that tips the scales in one direction or another. So let's say an influx of financial freedom, stability, literacy, education, property ownership, all that stuff just flooded the black community. And we were on fire, just straight killing it. And the scales tipped, right? We're going to be ahead of somebody. And at that point, do we now have to implement social programs to get those people up to speed? It's like, no, that's just how it's always going to be. It's always going to be somebody who's ahead of someone else. And that's just life. Now, once again, because of the history of this country, I understand the application of affirmative action and why it was put into place to begin with. But I look at what someone like him is saying and the other people and what they're saying, and I'm thinking like, dog, there's no plan. There's no plan for this stuff at all. They just throw out the word equality, but it's so open-ended in general. There's no plan. There's no threshold for, hey, we want employment in the black community to be at this level. And then we deem that as okay and we're good on some of these programs. Or we want reading scores or graduation rates to be at this level. And then we're good. And we don't need some of these other programs anymore. Because that's important. You want to know why? It's because no matter how you frame it, all of the stuff that we're doing, you can classify as racism. And I know a lot of people, they might hear something like that and be like, that's the craziest thing ever. Probably because half the population thinks that black people can't be racist. And then the other half just thinks that, well, no, if you're helping a quote unquote marginalized community, depending on whichever word you want to use to describe black people, when you're helping them, well, then no, that's not racist. Well, you can maybe say that in the general sense, but it still technically doesn't apply. Even though in the general sense, white kids might have more money, or they might be accepted into schools at a higher rate, or they might graduate at higher rates or whatever. It's still a bunch of white kids, if that's who we're comparing the black kids to or the black students to, is black and white, because that's typically how we roll. It's a bunch of white students who are not going to get into school because they can't afford it, or because they are underprivileged, or they don't have the resources, etc. That is a reality. So when these white kids are sitting by and then they see a black student get admitted, get their tuition paid for, room and board, books, all this stuff paid for, that's fantastic, right? I'm all for education. That's cool. If you can get that stuff paid for, fantastic. But if one of these kids sees an African American student get all of this on the basis of them being African American, I don't know what else to call that, especially when you look at very specific situations. Now, I've had a conversation with somebody and they made a point that things like affirmative action, you can describe it as a necessary form of racism, in the sense that this community was put so far back behind the eight ball that you need to do something to at least get, like I said earlier, get us up to speed or up to par as much as humanly possible. And it's like, okay, if you're gonna do that, which I'm not sitting here and saying that I'm opposed, but only when there's a specific plan in place. Because then what you do as time goes on, you then begin to indirectly put out the idea that stuff like this will just need to exist forever. And then it's gonna be a bunch of people who ain't never done nothing in the way of owning slaves or contributing directly to holding a specific group of people back. Then those people are going to look and be like, hey, I didn't do anything but just be born a lighter skin color. Why don't I get the same benefit, considering the fact that I might be low income or I might not have the resources to do X, Y, or Z? It's like that becomes more problematic as time goes on, because anytime that these programs are enacted, I sit there and I look and I'm like, man, this seems just very weird to me. Very weird. Not that I don't understand why they're doing it, but it's like they put no plan in place of, we want to get to this threshold and then that's good. You want to talk about equality, define it. What does it mean? And you can't please everybody, but I think it would help more people to get on board. And then more people might actually want to contribute to these programs, at least if they know what the deal is. But at least to my knowledge, those thresholds don't exist. And it's very, very evident because you have affirmative action program after affirmative action program. Left, right, and center, you got all these social justice movements popping up saying that they're doing this and that for black people. And once again, I talk about it a million times, and we're going to hit the millionth and one time. Is you look at every single statistical category that you can think of when it comes to education, health, finances, anything you can think of. The black community, we rank last or second to last when we stack up against other racial groups in this country. So I look at these programs and I'm like, how far has the needle moved? How well are these programs or these organizations, how effective are they at moving the needle? If that's even what they want to do. I question a lot of the motives of these people when they start certain programs or they start certain organizations or whatnot, because we do live in a capitalist society. So that's, hey, start your business or start your initiative and rack in those funds on the basis of any movement or ideology that people deem is worthy enough to donate to or to sow into, so to speak. Because I'm telling you, and I've said it before, but this time I'm not going to name no names, but it's a certain group that's coming to my mind that has made a lot of money, a lot of money, a lot of freaking money.
I'm not going to say what race, what people, doctor, and what hospital, and what media went to. We know I can't say that. It was
Black Lives Matter.
And I have not seen the advancement of this community in the way that it should be, considering how much money was raised. Something's not adding up to me. So when I look at these programs and I'm like, man, this to me, so a lot of the times just feels like we feel bad for who we are. So we're just going to come up with this program or that program and we're going to implement it here and we're going to put it there just because we feel bad, or maybe we want to raise our stock because we can be seen as helping black people get ahead and move along. And it's like, dog, when it's actually implemented in a way in which it helps black people and there's tangible evidence to show that the needle is being moved forward, there's consistent progress toward a very specific goal, then bam, dog, I'm on board 100% because I'm not naive to reality. I understand certain situations and history and how it has bled over into life today. I get that, man. But when I look at this, I'm like, if you ain't got no plan, are there just going to be programs in which scholarships are given out and money's just given out forever? Because trust and believe, we'd be the first in line to look at something like this, celebrate it, promote it. Guess what? You flip it on its head, you turn it, you get it to do a 180, and now something's being presented to white people only, and now all of a sudden it's racist. And I get it. Power dynamic, this, that, and the third. That's the thing that people throw out all the time. I get it, dog. But that doesn't apply to specific situations. So you can have a black person, a white person, let's even throw an Asian person in there, and they're all vying for a spot to get in school or to at least have their school paid for. Books, room and board, tuition, everything. And a black person will get in. Fantastic. That's amazing, right? You're contributing positively to the college admission rate for this community. But the reason that they're getting all this stuff paid for is because they're black. Then you look at the white person who might be in a similar situation as them, who doesn't get it because they're not black. And then you take it a step further. You look at the Asian person who doesn't get in because they're not black, and so forth and so on. But people don't look at it as a problem. It's because we're black, so we've been through a lot. And if you challenge any of these programs that are supposed to help black people and you are not black, well, then you're racist. And then if you are black and you challenge them, well, you're tap dancing for the white man. And all I'm saying is, dog, is it just enough to get in school, right? What about all of the statistics and the numbers and the categories that you can look at to say, hey, are we actually improving and getting better and moving to this so-called equality that we're looking for? Because if that's the case, then cool. We have a plan. It's something specific. And like I said, you're not going to please everyone. That's not the goal for this, right? but it just seems real open-ended and aimless. I understand the application of programs like these. I get it. Trust and believe. I understand it. But to a certain point, it just begins to not make any sense. It's like you can't just be like, okay, the country was messed up to y'all for hundreds of years. So for the rest of time, we're going to apologize every 2 days. We're going to tell you how much we hate ourselves because that's what we're supposed to do if we live in America and we're a lighter shade of skin. And then we're going to implement all these programs that are specific to black people with no actual goal in mind other than equality, because it's a quick buzzword to get people going. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do it forever because that's what it seems like is happening right now. That's crazy. So when someone sends me something like this, I think the expected response is to be like, dang, that sucks. And to a degree, it is unfortunate because there's going to be a handful of students who might come from low income situations who are not going to be able to go to the school of their choice, at least without taking out a bunch of loans, because they can't afford to do so. But two things can be right at once. It is also very unfortunate that there are other students who come from low income situations who cannot afford to go to the school that they want to go to, at least without taking out a lot of loans, because they can't afford to do so. And the factor that disqualifies them from reaping the benefits of a scholarship such as this is the simple fact that they are not the correct skin color. Ding, 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 ding. What does that sound like? So I don't even have to say anything more about it, even though I know that when it comes to situations like this, people like to make justifications for why it's okay for things to happen for a specific race and how that's not racist or any other buzzword that exists nowadays, but it'd be racist for somebody else. It's like at this point we're picking and choosing, dog. But I think what I'm asking for is very simple. Is just establish goals, plans, thresholds, whatever you want to call it, put them in place. That way all of this makes sense. Then it makes it easier to get on board with stuff like this. Just because I'm black don't mean I'm a cosign that this should be the standard for the rest of time, because at that point it's like, okay, let someone else do it and see what the narrative then turns into. So I'm not going to rock with that if there's no specific plan in place, and I wouldn't rock with it for any racial group, period. If there was no definitive roadmap, or at least as definitive as you can get, that leads to a specific goal that we can then define that as being equal or as close as we can get to it. So you want to move the needle forward? Cool. Define what that means. You want to implement all these programs and start these movements, build up these organizations in the name of social justice to push everyone toward equality. Fantastic. Just define what it means. That's all I'm saying. Just define what it means. Because if you flip this on its head and another group of people start doing this, the first word that's going to come out of everybody else's mouth is that's racist. Something to think about.